Pete Best truly hated him more than anyone, and that single truth shaped one of the most painful stories in rock and roll history. Born Randolph Peter Best on November 24, 1941, in Madras, British India, Pete grew up surrounded by rhythm and ambition thanks to his spirited mother, Mona Best, who later became instrumental in the rise of the Beatles. After the war, the Best family moved to Liverpool, where Mona opened the Casbah Coffee Club in their basement, a small but legendary venue that became the birthplace of a musical revolution. It was there that young local dreamers like John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison played night after night, trying to find their sound. Pete, quiet but passionate about music, was drawn to the drums. His dark hair, calm demeanor, and raw energy behind the kit made him stand out from the crowd. When the Beatles needed a permanent drummer in 1960, Pete was the natural choice, joining the band just before their fateful trip to Hamburg, Germany. In those wild nights of endless performances, Pete's powerful drumming became the heartbeat of the band. Crowds adored him, especially the women who were drawn to his brooding good looks, something that reportedly didn't sit well with Paul McCartney. Pete's rhythm drove the group through exhaustion and chaos, shaping the foundation of what the Beatles would soon become. But by 1962, cracks began to appear. Producer George Martin wasn't impressed with Pete's drumming and suggested using a session musician. And within weeks, Pete was called into manager Brian Epstein's office, where he was told he was out of the band, replaced by Ringo Starr. It was one of the coldest firings in music history, and it shattered Pete completely. He had helped carry the Beatles through their toughest years, only to be cast aside just before fame arrived. The pain cut even deeper because Pete believed Paul McCartney had played a major part in it. He later said Paul was never really his friend, always polite but distant, quietly ambitious and calculating beneath that charming smile. Pete recalled how Paul would criticize his drumming behind his back, pushing for his removal while pretending to be supportive. "Paul was the hardest one to forgive," Pete once said, and that bitterness lingered for decades. Watching Paul smiling on television as the Beatles conquered the world was torture for Pete, who struggled with depression and feelings of betrayal. He once admitted that every success the Beatles had was a reminder of what he'd lost, the band he helped build, and the brotherhood that had turned its back on him. But Pete didn't let his pain define him forever. Slowly, he rebuilt his life with quiet dignity, forming his own band and eventually stepping away from the music business to work a normal job in Liverpool. He married Kathy, the woman who gave him peace after heartbreak, and together they built a life filled with love, not fame. When the Beatles anthology was released in 1995, including early recordings with Pete on drums, he finally received recognition and royalties for his work, bringing long overdue validation and emotional closure. Years later, his album Hayman's Green proved that Pete still had music in his soul, reflecting on his journey with maturity and grace. Though he never forgave Paul completely, Pete came to terms with his place in history. The man who almost had it all, the drummer who laid the foundation for the greatest band in the world, and the one who showed that even in loss, there can be quiet victory. His story is one of heartbreak, pride, and resilience, reminding us that fame may fade, but legacy endures. If you enjoyed this story of music, rivalry, and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to Hollywood Bulletin and press the bell icon so you never miss more untold stories from the golden age of entertainment.